Fernando Alonso has been one of the hottest topics in Formula 1 yet again, but this time it's not because of his impressive form, but rather the opposite, his uncertainty with Aston Martin. Yes, you heard that right. Even though he has 6 podium finishes in 2023, it seems like his contract with the Silverstone-based squad could take a very quick turn south, and for all the wrong reasons. So, will the father and son relationship and the sudden slump of performance in Aston Martin see the two-time world champion find himself in a very undesired position in Formula 1? And if so, will we see him come back from retirement for the second time if Aston Martin decides to ditch him before 2026? Aston Martin is definitely the most positive surprise of 2023, and it goes without saying that they've now gained a lot of financial and marketing popularity in Formula 1. Truth be told, the team is more or less a one-man show right now, with Alonso being the facilitator of the good result, as he managed to finish only once behind Stroll in Barcelona and is leading him with an 87-point margin in the Drivers' Championship. This marks the biggest margin between two teammates, and when you have a one-man team that isn't ready to win races and championships just yet, like Red Bull, then bad news is written all over your future. But in this case, things are a bit complicated because of the fact that the underperforming driver, Lance Stroll, is the son of the owner of Aston Martin, and the chances that we'll see him drop out of his seat and be replaced with someone else are slim to none. Even though it would make the most sense for the team, as he's the one costing them a lot of performance and is actually putting them in a picky situation in which they have to prove to the sponsors that they have the car but not the driver to put out great results, this scenario is very unlikely to happen. And not just that, it may even facilitate the exit of Fernando Alonso in the upcoming years, possibly as early as 2024, according to Damon Hill. Because the last thing that Lawrence Stroll wants to see is his team being in the competition for high points, but his son being humiliated after barely making Q3 and finishing well outside the top 10. His best finish so far was in Australia, where he finished P4, but other than that, Stroll has been heavily underperforming, considering his team does have the car to continuously challenge Mercedes and Ferrari. As of now, Alonso's contractual situation with Aston Martin does bring him a bit of calmness and peace, but once Audi arrives in the sport in 2026, there could be a massive opportunity for the two-time world champion, and his former colleague from McLaren, Aluni Bravi, who is now one of the representatives of Alfa Romeo, soon to be Audi, has confirmed the interest from the team to sign Alonso. When talking about this matter, Bravi went on to add, "He's a champion. You don't win 2 F1 world titles if you don't have certain characteristics. It's a pleasure for me to see him. We're satisfied with our current driver pairing, and our aim is to give them competitive material. I would always sign Fernando, even at 45 years or more. I was able to get to know him well at McLaren when I was the manager of Stoffel van Dorn, who was his teammate. I was able to see firsthand the work he can do on a day-to-day basis as a driver, his ability, his great determination." Right now, Alonso is very happy with Aston Martin, and we don't want to be the drama bearers in this entire scenario. Winning 6 podiums in 2023 in the first 9 races is something that Alonso would have only dreamed of when he signed the contract with Aston Martin. After all, the team is yet to introduce changes to the car and unlock more performance from the green Red Bull, as it was labelled by everyone in the F1 world. And with the massive investment and the increased independence coming from Aston Martin, you'd only think that the future couldn't be brighter, right? But the dynamic seems to have shifted a bit in the previous races, and it's now Ferrari and Mercedes who are actually on top of their games, bringing more and more upgrades to their cars and finally understanding the learning curve of the 2022 regulations. What this can do to Aston Martin may be irreversible, and if we see Alonso drop further with his performance, then he would be on the unsatisfied side with Aston Martin. And despite his wishes to stay long-term with the team, this is definitely not a guarantee from the Silverstone-based squad. Even now, when everything is running smoothly for them, Crack hasn't replied as we would have expected him to Alonso's statement that the two-time world champion is here to stay for a long time and wants to fight for the 3rd championship in his career. When addressing this statement, Crack went on to say, "It's nice to hear that he has said that several years. We would be happy with that. I think the main thing, and this is one of the big qualities, is the desire to be at the front, the motivation, and I think this is fully on with Fernando. We don't think so much about that, to be honest. As you guys know, we take it race by race and we try to do well every race. It's nice to hear that, but we didn't think too much about it yet. Let's make it happen. Well, let's make it happen sounds a bit of a disappointment from Crack, as there is no statement in which he definitely states that Alonso would be the primary target to sign in the upcoming years. And truth be told, the two-time world champion won't wait another second to hop on another competitive team as soon as the opportunity arises. But this time, it's going to be in 2026. Right now, Alonso's contract with Aston Martin is due to end in 2024. And while it's a far-fetched scenario that he would be ditched before the beginning of the 2024 campaign and replaced with someone else, this is something that could yet happen with how Aston Martin has been acting towards signing Leclerc. Damon Hill and Ralf Schumacher spoke on this matter, and the 1996 world champion feels like Alonso's contract would soon go out the window if the Silverstone-based squad smells the tiniest bit of an opportunity to sign Leclerc. Obviously, the Monegasque would immediately outperform Stroll in the same machinery, and while this wouldn't solve the issue for Aston Martin when it comes to the familiar relationship between the Strolls, it would definitely solve one major issue for them: their future and the long-term partnership with its drivers. Alonso is entering his 42nd year of life, and by the time Audi, one of the main candidates for his signature, arrives in the sport, he'll be well into his 45th year. But this is where the interesting part comes. Audi has expressed massive interest in Alonso's driving services, even though he would be deep into his 40s. So with this in mind, we might see a massive shake-up in the drivers' lineup as soon as 2024. When talking about the possibility of replacing Alonso with Leclerc in 2024, Damon Hill went on to add, "What options are there for Leclerc? There aren't any. I suppose he could look at Aston Martin, but I think Fernando's got a 2-year contract with them anyway. I think he'd probably step aside if they paid him enough money, but I don't think he wants to give up a competitive drive." Even though Leclerc stated his motives and said that he's willing to make everything work with Ferrari, the team with which he just scored a P2 result in Austria after a devastating start of the season, there have been talks that the engineers back in Maranello couldn't fix what Leclerc was asking them to, which prompts the question, will Leclerc say enough is enough? Obviously, Aston Martin has made a massive step, and what we're seeing right now from them is definitely not the final form of the team, as they're yet to bring more upgrades to the AMR 23 and make it aerodynamically more competent. You'd think that this is something that Alonso would look forward to, right? Well, as all the things stand, if he continues to outperform Stroll and put him in shambles every time they visit the racetrack, rest assured that Lawrence is not going to tolerate his son being humiliated and will make a move that would see the two-time world champion being moved from the team. I know it sounds bizarre, and considering that Lawrence is the type of guy that wants to see results more than anyone else in the team, this is his son we're talking about. And if Stroll doesn't show maturity sooner rather than later, the future for the team is not bright from a financial and marketing point of view. Therefore, interesting and turbulent times come for Aston Martin. And with this in mind, we need to pay closer attention to Alonso, because just like last year, he could be the facilitator of a new silly season yet again.